our societies have been plagued by a very nasty villain. It has caused the uprise of poverty, starvation, and the destruction of entire civilizations. It's not a person or a monster. It's not a god or a ghost. It's more like an invisible, haunting shadow. You can't see it. You can't feel it. You can only experience it. And the worst part about it is that it lives inside the majority of the human population. So what is it? Apathy. Apathy is the opposite of empathy. It's what happens when we're so consumed with our day-to-day lives that we don't take time out for others, the environment, or our communities. Apathy is a problem that is causing a bunch of human suffering because there's no clear solution. It comes in many different forms. Pollution, sexism, bullying, you name it. Apathy isn't just a villain. It's a supervillain, and it threatens to destroy the world. But do not worry, there are these lovely people called advocates, and they are kind of like superheroes. They make strong outreach programs, lead rallies, write influential articles, and try to change laws. They do everything that they can to fight against the plight of apathy. The problem is that apathy has reigned for hundreds, thousands of years, and they can't do it alone. If we want to create real change in our world right now, we can't wait for advocates to do it for us. We have to be our own superheroes. Now, don't worry, it's not that hard. You've probably already done it. Have you ever played a video game? Well, then you've probably played some kind of superhero. Maybe it was a spy or an archaeologist, maybe an Italian plumber. In games, there are so many different stories and characters with lots of different problems that you're helping them solve. Now, something that I've learned from games is that you can be a hero by just being yourself. So what keeps each and every one of us in here from being a superhero in our real worlds? I don't necessarily believe it's because we don't completely care. I mean, on a fundamental level, we all have compassion. The problem comes from the idea of helplessness. It's the thought that from where we are right now, in our jobs, in our families, we cannot enact change. But we can, and it took me a long time to realize that myself. When I started college, I'm a senior right now here at the University of Florida, I really wanted to be a nurse. So I went to school for nursing. I had a 4.0 GPA. I was helping in hospice care centers. I was helping kids in need. I was so sure every day that I was training to become the superhero that I've always wanted to be. But before college, I was an actress, an artist, a singer. That's what I like to do with my spare time, and that's where my passions lied. I love the idea of creating experiences that other people can walk away from and think about. So, when I finally got my acceptance letter to the University of Florida School of Nursing, I was not as excited as I thought I would be. In fact, I was kind of disappointed. It took me a while to realize that I didn't need to physically help people in order to make change. I mean, that's what nursing is, right? It's physically and mentally helping people survive. But that's not where my passions lied. Instead, I wanted to use my own innate talents in order to impact change. So, that week that I received my letter, I went and changed my major, like a lot of you probably did, and applied for an internship that week, and here I am today. So I'm a user experience designer for video games. Social advocacy is not necessarily part of my job description. I make prototypes and wireframes, do user testing, and on the surface, it doesn't seem like I have a lot of superpowers to help against the fight of apathy. But I do. We all do. We just need to learn how to use it. So the first thing I would suggest is to think about a time in your life when you met your first superhero, outside of your families, of course. So my first memory of this was when I was in second grade. There I was, sitting in the front seats, buck teeth, sunburnt skin and a pencil, ready for a new day of learning, our teacher walked in and told us that we would be having a new student. So of course, I was really excited, a brand new friend. But then she came in, and I looked at her, kind of in bewilderment, and later that day I ran to my friends. I told them, "What do you think about Debbie?" "Well, she seems nice. Maybe we should hang out with her sometime." No, what? We can't do that." "Well, why not?" "Because she's black." So my friends looked at her, and then looked at me, and then back at her, and back at me. Veronica? Yeah? You're black." You can imagine my shock. I was black and no one had ever told me? And of course, before that in my life, my world had been so filled with racist messages that of course I was going to assume that was normal. That is, until my superhero came. So my teacher, she overheard the conversation, patted me outside, and told me about how inconsiderate I was to our new classmate. She told me about Martin Luther King and the civil rights movement. She talked to me about racial equality. And I listened. I cried. She was right. I was consumed with apathy. And now, it's years later, I'm not in second grade anymore. I learned I'm mixed race, I'm Puerto Rican, and she introduced me to a little something called, well, racism. And I learned, and that affected me for the rest of my life. And that's something that she didn't have to do. But she used her superpowers as a second grade teacher who has an impact on a whole bunch of students to take the time out for me, change my worldview, change my direction, and prevented me from hurting countless people that I could have come in contact with the rest of my life. I hurt Debbie, and I realized then that someone could have thought the same way about me. And later on, they did. So next, I would after you've thought about your own superhero, maybe it was a nurse that was an advocate for their patients, or maybe it was a hairdresser that gave free trims to the homeless. After you've thought about your own superhero, think about a problem that you yourself are passionate about. Now, as a designer, I kind of notice a lot about the things around me. Airplane seats don't really support heavier passengers. The voting registration system is oddly cryptic. And, hallways, they're not really designed for the blind. And when designers don't design inclusively, that's apathy. But what about my realm? I was working in games and digital entertainment. What was I supposed to do there? It's not exactly a field where most people think is a way you can enact change in the world. And I was really disappointed sometimes in my field. As you probably know, games kind of have a bad reputation of being sexist or promoting violence. And I wanted to work in games because I saw it as this ultimate art form. And of course, I couldn't continue. I didn't want to let it sink down this path any further. So how could we use games as a way to empower people, not just entertain them, or not just promote views that are harmful for society? So, after you've thought about a problem that you're passionate about, think about where you are and how you can use your skills, your talents, your positions in life to find ways to solve that problem. So I work as a user experience designer at a startup here called Immerse Games. We are creating a huge educational video game that's going to teach kids STEM skills, social skills, as much as we can. It's a platform for learning. And as you know, there's many different kinds of kids with many different personalities, lots of needs. And as a quasi-adult, I didn't feel confident, as many designers do, that I was able to relate to kids and know what they want. So a lot of ways designers go out and try to figure out what their users want and what they need is they usually bring them in for testing or interviews. And we at Immerse Games didn't think that was enough. We really wanted to create a huge game that people would spend a lot of time with, so we really needed to know our users. So we created a program called Immersed XP. Immersed XP is an after-school program for middle school and high school students in the Alachua County area to come to our offices once a week and learn about game development and startups. So every week they came and learned everything from level design to marketing. And it was a blast. Our design team learned a lot. We iterated on our designs and made them better and better. We developed a relationship with our users. And the best part was that we got to give back to our society and offer kids these classes and these sessions and availability to work and see how games are made for free. And it's not just us that are creating things like this. Right now, there's this huge movement in games in general to make products that impact social change, or work on the environment, or health, or social justice. There's lots of different ways that games are taking off right now to create change. And if games can do it, I mean, think about it. Video games? On the surface, it seems like one of the most useless fields to go into. Of course, I don't believe that. And especially now, I can see that there is lots of change, even in the AAA industry. So when you go back today, when you go back home as a mother, or back to school as a student, or back to your lab as a researcher, think about what your superpower is, how you can help fight against the plight of apathy. We don't really need to be in these certain positions to enact change. We can do it right where we are, with the talents we already have, with the passions that we've already developed over the years. You don't need to lead the march to make a difference. So go out there, be your own superhero, and let's watch the world change together. Thank you.